All right. Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started with our May webinar, Building a Greener Future. Um, Firstly, my name's Alan Boyque. I am going to be the host of the conversation today with our guest, and I'm one of the founders of Nialli, and pleased that you could join us. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Kelly Choi. She's head of our marketing area. Kelly, you have a few words for us?
Yeah, good morning, or I should say good day, everyone, depending where you are in the world. I'm so glad everyone could join us today. I just wanted to give a quick announcement. If everyone wants to mark down on their calendar, I've got June webinar planning underway. So June 20th, we're going to be joined by Eric Lucis to talk about poll planning and all the wonderful things that come from that. So we will just keep your eyes open for that invite. Thanks, Alan.
All right, thanks, Kelly. And now to introduce, just one more item. We will be recording this, and Kelly will send out the webinar to our YouTube channel. So, and you'll be able to go view other webinar recordings there. And also, you do have a job, audience. First of all, welcome returning viewers and new viewers. You do have a job. You have to learn one thing. So, um, the format, we'll be speaking for about half an hour with Paul Bingham. He's the CEO and founding partner, and then we'll follow up with questions um, in our chat window, so you can put them in there for the last 15 minutes. So again, introducing Paul Bingham. He's the CEO and founding partner of Smart Connected Buildings. So Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your history, how you got into this business and to today, and some of the things you've been involved with.
Okay, thanks ever so much for the introduction, Alan. So yeah, I'm Paul Bingham, the CEO, founding part of an organisation called Smart Connected Buildings. Smart Connected Buildings are digital transformation consultants, experts, advisors, and we've also got a ever-growing community of 10,000 property, technology, software, ESG professionals, all driving change within the built world. So my story started back in the late 90s. When I left university, I did a year out with one of the big banks in the UK, NatWest Bank, and I got involved in their retail transformation program. And I could see that, and this is when telephone banking and internet banking was starting to be a thing. And I could just see how technology was going to revolutionize the financial services sector. So I quickly realized that technology was going to be one of the biggest growth curves within my own career. And working in the City of London, on the other side of the pond to most people here, working in the City of London, I didn't really get on with the financial services sector. I quickly landed in a cushy number looking at smart building technology. So my background's always been around smart building and creating the business case for using technology, software, and different ways of working to drive positive change within the built world. So I've operated in various guises across the industry. I'm a property developer, so I've developed properties, taken commercial buildings and converted them into high-end residential apartments. I've worked for consultants, software companies, systems integrators. So I've got a good angle, a good overview of how the whole real estate and construction market works holistically. Back in 2017, as a developer, I quit corporate life, and then my first meeting with the main contractor and the M&E contractor in the UK, the wonderful term of value engineering popped up. And throughout the last 25 years, I've never, and I still don't understand why the construction industry engineers out value within a project. For me, you want to keep the value in the project. So when you look at technology, software, digital transformation, there's always been that resistance because they see technology as a cost line. And obviously, my role within the industry is to basically change the conversation and say, well, no, it's actually an investment that's going to drive positive change for not only the project, the construction company, but ultimately the asset that they're building at the back end of it. So I operate at the heart of what I say are three ever converging industries: real estate, technology, and software. My number one mission in life is to solve the biggest problem impacting planet and the real estate industry. 40% of global carbon comes from the built world. And I think the time has finally come that we need to change that horrific statistic. So that's a very brief introduction to myself and my background.
Yeah, the sustainability topic is obviously, top of mind globally. And you started talking about the why. You started this venture, the smart connected buildings. And maybe describe a little bit of the what. Like what are smart connected buildings for people that are fairly new to that concept?
Okay, so smart buildings is the term that people generally talk about. I actually broaden it to basically say this is about digitally transforming a fairly laggard legacy industry. But if you look at the smart building concept, in essence, it's basically taking a traditional building and transforming it into a computer run by software. So all the value in the modern world is created by software in the cloud. So if you look at smart buildings, the whole point of a smart building infrastructure is how does software, data, analytics, and insights drive positive value for the multiple stakeholders that exist within the built world? So if you look at a smart building, I mean, you've got the asset owner. So the asset owner has a requirement to look at ESG, compliance, regulation, well-being within the building. So the software layer, the smart layer, can basically pull data and insights out to inform strategic and provide strategic value to the asset owner. The asset manager, the facilities manager, the estates manager, the portfolio manager is the second and probably the most important stakeholder, because if you look at the way that most buildings are traditionally designed, they're designed by mechanical and electrical engineers who, as robust engineers, they're very good at what they do. One of the biggest gaps is most buildings now are nothing more than large, giant computers run by a software, or the term that I use is SBOS, or Smart Building Operating System. So that Smart Building Operating System, in essence, connects to every single asset within the building to drive change. And that's even people. So the third stakeholder is obviously the user, the occupant, the enterprise that operates and exists within the building. So it's how does the user interact and engage with the space? The term I always say, real estate is no longer about real estate. Every traditional investment model out there has been turned inside out, upside down post-COVID. Most offices are empty. Most landlords, investment companies, real estate investment trusts are sat scratching their heads trying to wondering what should they be doing with their portfolio. My personal view is the built world is about experiences now. So one of the big, if we keep on the sustainability agenda, if you look at Gen Z, X, Y, the youngsters of the world, they're the people that typically are going to be working within corporate offices. They actually choose employment now by looking at green credentials, ESG credentials. What is the organization doing around sustainability? So they vote on their feet. So you've got this big push around flex, remote working, hybrid working. And that's a quantum shift in the commercial real estate world. So for me, it's how does technology help drive that agenda and provide positive change? So in essence, a smart connected building, in summary, provides data, analytics, insights to the right person at the right time, but most importantly, in the right context.
Yeah, that all makes sense, and we've seen that in other industries, and say even the automotive industry where there's systems of transport vehicles, etc. So it certainly is a trend, and you were spot on in identifying that in your career. Are there people and places, I don't know whether it's countries or companies, that are exemplary or leading in this regard? Like, who are the virtual power plants and alternative energy? You have Australia, Germany, and Netherlands. Where's the thought leadership in terms of the things that you're talking about here?
I think when we look at digitally transforming the construction industry or the real estate industry, I think it's, if you look at things globally, there are different pockets around the globe that are further advanced than others. I do know that the East is very well advanced. So if you look at
Mm,
what's going on in places like Japan, China, they're really pushing the boundaries, and anything they're building now, they're following a digital first strategy.
wow.
Um, Obviously, most of my background in my career has been based in the UK and typically Northern Europe. In the last 7 years, I've spent most of my time talking to various organizations, companies, prop tech companies all over the planet. And I do feel that where the industry thinks it's at compared to where the industry is really at, there is a big gap. So let me give an example. So there's a project that I was getting involved with in the Middle East. I'm not going to say what the project was, probably one of the biggest construction projects on the planet. There was a project, there was a building that was the innovation hub of this forward-thinking project. And you would think that the specification was written to create a truly smart connected building. Categorically, it wasn't. And I got involved in it. And the bizarre thing was, all of the smarts got stripped out of the project purely because of cost savings. So there's a lot of noise in the market. People talk the talk, but the problem is not many people walk the walk. And there's a lot of resistance, I think, to this change. And most of it is fear of the unknown. One of the big bugbears I've got is the industry could have digitally transformed about 10 years ago, but most of the big stalwarts and brands that dominate the industry, they make money by not changing the status quo. So if you look at facilities management companies, they still make money by sending a man in a van to effect a fix. Whereas if you had a software layer, most of the fix, in fact, most of the insights and the fixes could be done in an automated fashion without actually having to send a man in a van to effect a fix. So I think that the industry's been resisting it, but also I think the powers to be have made it that they haven't moved forward as quickly as they should do. I think I always talk about the analogies like the beef burger analogy, right? So if you squeeze the burger, all the fat and the mayonnaise is going to fall out and all the beef's going to stay in the middle. We're at a stage now I think within the construction real estate industry whereby it is a case of digitize or die. No longer is it like I'm going to wait and see what happens. There are so many new entrants now. If you look at the facilities management market, there's so many new entrants now talking about smart FM. They're going to be completely revolutionizing how buildings are managed, monitored, and maintained. And obviously, bring it back to the construction sector. I think the exact same is there. Certain construction organizations get it, certain construction organizations don't get it. Most construction companies are still operating using 1990s technologies. Most construction sites are paper-based analog monstrosities. And you've got in the UK, you've got your tier one contractors that went down this digital transformation journey back in 2011 when BIM, building information modeling, started to become a thing. Most of those organizations now are trying to unravel the mess that they've created, and they've got like 100 different software platforms to deliver their vision. They're now having to unravel and basically reduce the complexity they've built. Whereas smaller construction companies now, they've got a blank sheet of paper to go and do something quite revolutionary. And I'm seeing a lot of smaller construction companies that are following a digital first mentality, and actually they're gaining traction and actually overtaking some of the larger organizations because their projects are delivered quicker, more efficiently, more safer, and ultimately more cost effectively. So I'm a firm advocate that it isn't a matter of waiting around for digital technology. The digital technology has been around for 20, 30 years. It's just a matter of embracing it.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It is interesting that digital transformation has become part of the lean conversation, where removing the waste of the 100 apps the shiny apps that I jumped onto, and then where is the value? So in the life cycle, uh, the idea of the smart connected buildings, it must have to happen early. Like it must be like, is it owner led? Is it contractual? Is it just built into I'll just call it the culture of the project? Like, where does it need to start? Like, I'm thinking of the viewers here. Some of them might be owners, some of them might be GCs, some of them might be trades. Where is there an onus? Is it a team idea? Talk a little bit about that. Have a little advice for people on how it needs to get started successfully. I mean, you've talked about a couple of projects that went south. Are there any that are exemplary that you can talk about, and how it worked?
Yeah, so I think it all stems with the actual asset owner, um, or the investor. I mean, most of them start with a vision that they want to have a smart building. So they start with the aspiration of making it
Mm,
highly tech enabled. But then what happens is, as you go through the construction process, it gets diluted, and that vision is never really realized.
mm,
The challenge you've got in this whole smart building digital construction space is there's so many stakeholders involved, unlike any other industry. And I think the reason that the construction and real estate industry is the last industry to be digitally transformed is because it's such a traditional industry. You can't break down those traditions, silos, and the culture that exists within the industry. So it's got to start right at the planning stage. So you've got lots of smart building certification companies that have popped up in the last few years. Wired Score, the smart building certification. Um, so these organizations are basically now saying, we will certify the building. No disrespect to these organizations, but we were delivering platinum smart buildings back in the year 2000, right? So certain organizations in the UK, you've got your British Land, your Land Securities, the two big landlords and asset owners in the UK, they've been delivering smart buildings since the early 2000s because they knew that because they were an owner operator, they could control and manage and basically dictate exactly what went into the building. I think the challenge you've got is you've got build to sell and build to rent. And most projects, if it is a speculative bid and it's going to be build it and sell it, they're not really interested in the life cycle of the building. And because we live in a capitalist world, the only thing they really give a shit about, pardon my language, is profit. And the problem I've got with that is they want to maximize profit as a developer and an asset owner because that's what their shareholders want. And the way they maximize profit is strip out all the value, which means you get a fairly dumb building. But more importantly, they hit the head over the head, they bang the head of the supply chain and squeeze the supply chain to squeeze out value. I think that economic model's got to change, right? The economic equation's got to change. So I think with the advent of ESG, sustainability, compliance, that's now putting people's feet to the fire, and they've actually got to follow a certain methodology. In the UK, you've got RIBA, the Royal Institute of British Architects. RIBA is the methodology that we follow. You've got the RIBA stages. They've now just launched a smart building overlay. So they've recognized that if technology, software, automation, smart building operating systems, if that's not thought about very early on the stage, and they're actually saying stage 0, if that's not thought about at the beginning, the vision that everyone's talking about will never get realized. So for me, the gap in the market is everyone starts with a big vision, but the minute they hand over the project to a construction company, they lose control. And for me, it's how do you keep control through that whole life cycle? But ultimately, the value is in the 25 to 30-year running of the asset. And that's where I think there's the big disconnect. So the challenge in the market is making sure that the vision at the beginning follows the whole way through for the 30-year life cycle. And it's not an easy thing to solve, no matter what anyone says. It's not easy. I've been banging for this for 30 years, and I don't think anyone's actually solved the problem. For me, some clients get it, some clients don't get it. And for those clients that don't get it, I mean, more for them. They're not going to be around for much longer, unfortunately, in the modern world we live in.
Yeah, I hate to be an advocate for rules, but you mentioned standard bodies and, things like LEED or BREEAM, if they started to evolve, and they already are, sustainable building type of standards. And it almost begs the question, does there need to be new rules and codes about how you build, and that smart buildings do have, I think you mentioned the term intangible value over the longer term? Does that need to be almost legislated? And I hate to say that. Um, is that how one changes policy and practice? And I'm just trying to get your perspective because you've been doing it for 30 years.
Categorically, it's got to come from regulation, government, industry. I mean, for me, that is the thing that I think is missing. The problem is it's the Wild West out there at the moment.
Okay.
Everybody's got a prop tech startup that is going to revolutionize the world and deliver this ESG nirvana that everyone's talking about. But because it's such a complex ecosystem, the challenge is you've got lots of best of breed technologies that can get cobbled together to deliver value. And then you've got the platforms that can do everything, but maybe only deliver 70 to 80% of the value. And that's why this whole space is so messy. Compliance and regulation is the thing that I think will unlock this. I just personally don't think that that's going to happen anytime soon.
Okay.
ESG, sustainability, and compliance, they are the big triggers. And I've always said the industry's been resisting going down the ESG route, but organizations that are looking at implementing ESG strategies, and most of it's greenwashing, as we all know, there is no downside. Because the first thing you're going to do, if you've got existing buildings, the first thing you're going to do is identify where the quick wins are. And you can typically go into any traditional building that's 5, 10 plus years old. And let's say it's, I don't know, 150,000 square feet, burning £1 million worth or $1 million worth of energy. For £30,000, a bit of lean consulting and a bit of software, you can save 30% on energy. So you invest 30,000, you save 300,000 in the first year, at which point you've got an infinite return on investment. What I don't understand is why that cannot be forced upon the global real estate industry. And of course, we know that it can't be. So at the moment, it's quite easy to solve the problem that real estate consumes 40% of global carbon. It's just not very simple to actually implement it unless it is regulatory.
Right. And it does sound also that the conversation has to happen amongst all the stakeholders. I mean, us holding this webinar is about, hey, this is an important topic. Sustainability, lean practice is about adding value or getting rid of waste. And the sustainability, call it theme or topic, is obviously has benefits. Like, it's not silly, so to speak. It's not a notion. It's something we have to do to, make sure that there's uh, proper opportunities for future generations. Um, what do you think can be done tomorrow by people on this call, by you and I? I know you're sending a message. What is it collectively that we can do?
The whole vision around smart connected buildings was it's not one company, one technology, one software stack that can drive change. It's an industry conversation, and obviously to
Okay.
build modern buildings, it is a team effort, right? So this is all about collaboration, integration and doing things for the common good. The only way you're going to solve this is just completely change how buildings are built, and that's not going to be easy, because the problem is, the reality is, because the construction industry's done it this way for hundreds of years, breaking that down is going to be quite a challenge. And I mean, let me give you an example, right? So the way that, if you look at the building services that go into a building, the M&E contractor breaks down each service and goes to a specialist contractor. That specialist contractor goes to a subcontractor, and then a subcontractor, and a subcontractor. So you've got massive inefficiencies on that, because you've got margin upon margin upon margin upon margin, and the raw cost of a CCTV life critical piece of equipment is double, if not triple, the price by the time it gets to the actual asset owner. So you've got situations where you've got a team, a team of cable engineers pulling cable. You've got a separate team plugging in the CCTV camera. You've got a separate team installing the network switches, a separate team installing the access control, because that's the way that it's always done. For me, surely the most obvious way to do it is get a fully integrated architecture and just get one engineer. If you've got one engineer installing the data cable, why wouldn't they install the camera and then commission the camera? So it's about reverse engineering something that, because it's always been done this way. And even after 20 years of like trying to beat the drum, that still happens today. So there needs to be a change. I'm seeing it with certain forward-thinking organizations. So I think there's a lot of new blood entering the industry from parallel adjacent industries. And they're following completely different methodologies and just completely transforming what it means to deliver a building in 2024.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's akin to the telephone industry, where you had the incumbents that had the big iron and controlled, you know, local area networks and relationships in between. Then incumbents came in and just blew it apart. You know, your Cisco's and your you know, level threes, you know, with transport and fiber, and just transformed everything.
Well,
And it's probably quite similar to what'll happen now. It's disruptible, I guess, is where I'm trying to go by the sounds of things.
I've got a good analogy here, right? So if you look, I don't know when it was, let's say it was 2004, Cisco created the IP telephone. So you had a telecoms manager that worked within the enterprise, and they all said, you're never going to put an IP, you're never going to put a telephone handset on our data network. Within 3 years, Cisco dominated the market. 70 to 80% of handsets being sold were Cisco, and the telecoms manager's role disappeared overnight and got engulfed within the IT department. If you think about the facilities management industry as it is today, they're about to go through the exact same shift. So
Exactly.
facilities management isn't about hardware and engineers. Facilities management is about software, data, analytics, and strategic insights. So for me, going to the big burger analogy, you are going to have a big fallout in the next 3 to 5 years. The facilities management role within an organization is now changing. It's not just looking at facilities. Facilities and real estate is now a C-suite conversation. Why? Because buildings give off so much and burn so much energy. People and buildings are the biggest two costs for most enterprises. So I say it's going to be exciting times, but the problem is I've been here for so long. I'm not going to hold my breath and see that this is going to transform anytime soon. But I do think that there is going to be a big quantum shift. And I think with the admin, I don't want to use the term AI, but AI is going to change the rules of everything, right? And for me, I think most organizations have got their head in the sand, because they're like a rabbit in the caught in the headlights, thinking, I don't know what to do here. And because there is no roadmap or blueprint, we're entering the unknown. I think there's going to be a lot of winners and losers across every industry and subsector that exists across the whole construction and real estate industry globally.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was intimately involved in the development of IP telephony, so I can see the similarities and the patterns. And I bet there's people, viewers, that have questions they're saving up. If you could put them in the chat, let's see if we can talk about some controversial things here. I mean, it's not controversial, but it is definitely going to be a disruptive topic, as you've identified.
I mean, also just to comment, I think one of the biggest challenges that I saw very early on in my career, most of the decision making was done by individuals within the real estate industry that were of a certain age. Because they weren't tech native, they never really understood technology and they resisted technology. So I look at myself, I'm now 48 years old. So we just started getting computers in my final years at university. So I think people older than me have always resisted technology. And generally the younger generation now, they are tech natives. I think it's the younger generation that's going to really drive this change. And I think if you look at a lot of the new innovation that's coming down, it's been delivered by 25 to 35-year-olds that are just coming to this industry going, what on earth are we, how does this industry operate? And it's like when you get a 25-year-old school leaver joining the corporate world. They get given an antiquated phone and a laptop and they go, what on earth am I supposed to do with that? They live on their smartphone devices, right? So I think the younger generation are going to be the people that drive and demand this change. But the problem with that is they lack the experience and the understanding the real, how does the construction and the real estate industry really work? And if you don't really understand the complexities of the industry, it's really difficult to really drive value in every single part of the complex ecosystem.
All right, we have a question from Laura. Do you have an example you can share of a company doing things right from a sustainability connected buildings perspective? So I don't know if you're allowed to talk to the company or mention companies, because of your contractual situation, but can you speak generally about
Yeah,
who, what?
yeah. So I do know. I'm going to talk primarily about the UK market because I know the UK and Northern European market. So if you look at the flex space or co-working, there's a whole new drive to like new modern workspaces. So in the UK, and I'm guessing it's global, B Corp, a lot of organizations are signing up to become B Corp organizations. So organizations that are signing up to become B Corp in the real estate world, they've got no option but to make sure that technology, software, and automation is driving value because they've got to demonstrate saving and innovation by using technology to do things differently. So there are a few interesting flex operators in the UK that are completely changing the rules of what a modern workspace of the future needs to look like. And they're basically using technology to completely change the game as to what it means to operate and work in a modern workspace. So anyone signing up to B Corp, for me, their whole mission is to do things right, and it is a sustainable led model. So without naming names, yeah, there's quite a few B Corp organizations that I know. I chat to them because they know that technology, software, and doing things differently is the only way that they're going to be able to deliver what they need to deliver.
All right. Makes sense. I looked into B Corp. It's an interesting initiative, and I know that people like Steelcase and Herman Miller and some of the larger office furnishing companies have really cottoned on to some of the, concepts of new spaces and new ways of thinking. We have a question from Jason. Thank you. Instead of legislative efforts, how could the industry incentivize the adoption of sustainable practice supporting smart buildings? So is there a way to, is there some kind of, you know, way of providing credit?
So rephrase that question again.
Well, instead of having policy, is there something that the industry could do to incentivize sustainable practice,
Yeah, so
supporting
okay, so
smart buildings?
I mean, look, I've always had this concept whereby when I chat to an asset owner developer, I will always say, look, let's do the Pepsi challenge. Come to myself and my network of
Mm,
digital trailblazers, and let us deliver a smart connected building. And in parallel to that, go out through your traditional supply chain. The reality is, going back 5 years ago, you'd always pay probably a 2% to 5% premium on delivering a truly smart building. Today, you can deliver it far more cost effectively because you do. I talk about smart procurement, right? So smart procurement is one of the pillars for me that I think the construction industry doesn't really get right, because they do what they've always done. If you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you always got: relatively dumb, unsophisticated buildings. Whereas the pioneers out there, they're going to say, well, okay, we'll run two parallel streams. The benefit is if you deliver it in a completely different way, i.e., taking away the rule books and delivering it in as a software-led type infrastructure, and having one integrator to pull everything together and move all the different layers of the supply chain, you can deliver smart connected building more cost effectively, but the value is actually in the running of the building. So for me, it's how do you change the economic equation, whereby because you're going to be delivering a building that's far more greener and using less energy, I think the economic equation needs to be, well, how do you take some of that value and instill that through the supply chain? The problem you've got, there's too many stakeholders. There's so many. If you look at digital transformation, no matter what industry or whatever you're looking to achieve, the biggest problem you've got is getting every stakeholder bought in. Because if the stakeholders aren't bought in, from the C-suite all the way through in the way of construction, you might have 30 different contractors on site at any one time. You've got the developer, you've got the architect, you've got the bank, you've got the asset owner, you've got the facilities manager. If they're not all joined up, you're never going to reach this nirvana. And the problem is, you've got friction at every point on the supply chain. So it always starts at the beginning, and ultimately it starts with the contract. And the problem is, with construction contracts, they're written in a certain way that technology and all the smarts are quite difficult. It's all about risk. I mean, risk is the thing that I think gets in the way of most construction projects, right? Who's going to take the risk for the design to deliver a smart building?
right.
And to do that, you've got to change the rules.
Yeah, Rick has an interesting question because you mentioned the difference between build to sell and build to rent. Would you say that that latter group would be the group that may drive change through design, construction, facility management, sort of life cycle thinking? Um, does that make sense?
Yeah, owner operators definitely.
Hmm,
So if you know you're going to build the building and own and operate the building, you're incentivized to do things
right.
differently. So you don't mind investing and doing something a little bit different, because there may be a little bit more cost. If you think about what normally happens is, through value engineering, you sort of take out the quick wins because you can save a lot of money. The problem with that is you're just kicking the problem down the road, and then actually you've got to go and retrofit a lot of technology that should have been designed in at the beginning. And the problem you've got with technology today, the technology life cycle is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So going back to Cisco, the economic life cycle for a Cisco switch or wireless access point or telephone would typically be about 7 years. The life cycle now for most technology assets is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Software changes the game. So little things, if you look at like light bulbs, I mean, like if you look at how many light bulbs go into a building, there are expensive light bulbs and you've got lighting control systems, that gets value engineered out because it's expensive. But actually, the biggest benefit is, and this is where the economic equation is not brought into the project, which is if a light fitting's controlled through a smart lighting system, first of all, you're going to trim the amount of the lumens coming off the lights. You're going to save 30% on energy straight away. You're going to enhance the asset life because you're not pushing the light to its maximum extent. But because you've got smart lighting control across the building, you've also got things like Bluetooth wireless mesh. That wireless mesh becomes the IoT layer. The IoT layer can then, because lighting is pervasive throughout the building and also construction sites, you've then got an IoT layer to connect to sensors, looking at air quality, air particulates, asset tracking, wayfinding. The value is in the software. The value is in the application layer. So I always say, to keep it really simple, it's like a smartphone, right? If you look at a smartphone is connected when it's connected to the internet, but it's not smart. It's when you put the application on the phone that's bespoke to the user, it becomes smart. The value is how you design everything to really meet the needs of every single stakeholder. And that's why it's so complex. Whereas if you are an owner and operator, you are the main stakeholder from inception all the way through to the 30, 40, and in some cases 50-year life cycle of the building.
Right. I have another question. This is from Ryan, and you and I have discussed this, and it's about a side-by-side comparison. A breakdown. I don't know if it's financial, but the cost difference. Well, it is financial. The cost difference between smart building and traditional. And I know that's hard, and you've made some points about sort of long-term operating benefits versus initial construction cost. Is there any data out there that starts to say, hey, you know what, the differences are almost becoming negligible, or this needs to happen before someone that cares about accounting is going to go, oh yeah, this is good for me now?
Right, so there's loads of tangents that I can go off here, but I'm going to try and keep it concise. So one aspect is, if you've got two buildings, I'm going to say you've got two buildings in the City of London. They're both valued £1 million. One's a smart building, one's a dumb building. Are you going to be able to sell the smart building for more money than the dumb building? The answer is no. However, what will happen is the dumb building will be sold at a discount. Therefore, a smart building that basically has all of the credentials, it's BREEAM, LEED, Fitwell, all these accreditations, it's Wide Score Platinum, because it's got the accreditations, it will hold its value. Whereas a fairly unsophisticated dumb building, it will be sold at a discount. So there is an economic equation there. The problem you've got is insurance companies, banks, you've got a red book valuation. So the bank that basically releases money to the developer, they look at this as like a dumb building and a smart building are one and the same. The minute that the financial companies understand that a smart building, the insurance premiums should be a lot less for smart building because it is safer, a lot easier to run, manage, and maintain, that's where I think the conversation, the debate will change, which sort of goes back to the regulation bit. I think the financial services element, that there is an angle there. A smart building versus a standard building, I mean, it's about smart procurement. I mean, it is about smart procurement, right? So I think it's about how you procure the technology. And if you look at what normally happens is main contractor, and then you've got your traditional M&E contractors that all bid for the project. And then the M&E contractor, the way that they drive value is basically partitioning out each building services discipline. That's the problem. You've got duplicate project management on site. You've got lots of engineers on site. I mean, there's just inefficiencies in that whole model. Whereas if you had one common, I mean, they talk about the master systems integrator. I'm not going to go on about the master systems integrator role because I think it's a bit of a bullshit term. But this is about the it's about the output specification. So the output specification is, what do you want the building to do? How do you want the stakeholders to engage? What data, what assets, what insights do you need? And then you value engineer from the output specification. The problem at the moment, people are just throwing technology and software and solutions into the project without really understanding how it all links together. And what happens is when you take out one small part of a well integrated, thought out, conceptualized technology design, what people don't understand is the ramifications, a bit like the butterfly effect. One small change there has masses of ramifications elsewhere that people don't really understand. That's the difference. So for me, you've got to design it as a computer. I mean, like, it's a software platform and layer. You've got to start with the why, the what, the how, the who, and then reverse engineer. So smart procurement, for me, you've any change how you procure and manage buildings. And this is about building services, and building services typically take up a fair sized chunk of any cost of any new build development.
Right. Well, there's so much to talk about, and it clearly is a disruptive topic. And thank you for your insights. We are at time, and we will have to catch up to you in the future, so that 30 years and 6 months, we'll see what your progress is. I'm just going to flash our emails up on the screen just in case. It'll be on the recording, as we mentioned. If you go to the YouTube channel, and you can grab either myself or Paul if you want to continue a conversation with Paul and to get perhaps his help in some of your objectives. And then, of course, we offer the visual planner, the planning, digital pull planning software. So I invite you to visit Nialli.com to check that out. So we're going to say so long and thank you for attending. And please watch out for our invite for our June webinar. So Paul, thank you for your time and sharing. Appreciate it very much.
Not a problem. Thanks ever so much.
All right. So long, everyone.
Take care.